Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Community Office Hours. This week, Tim is taking a break and will be on vacation for the next several weeks. So, if you are having trouble getting feedback on your code review or your question in the open source community Slack, you can just at me, Sam, and I will try to respond and help you out with that. So, Tim and I both will actually not be here in next week's office hours, as I will be traveling. But we'll have some other fun host for you. So today with me I have Kyle and Scott, who are front-end developers at Moderne, amongst other responsibilities, and they have some really exciting stuff to talk to you about. But first, I thought I'd just go through some of the announcements and such that we have from the last week, fill you in on the new goodies. So I will share my screen again. So on the blog front, our featured blog post is introducing the Moderne Dev Center, which is a really cool new feature of the Moderne SaaS that I encourage all of you to check out, both the blog post on it and the actual feature itself. Really neat way of modernizing and improving code quality across your organization's many repositories. Let's see, in other announcements, I think we've mentioned this before, but a reminder, we are going to be at UberConf in July, where Moderne founder Jonathan, or Moderne co-founder Jonathan, is going to be delivering a keynote presentation. And I forget exactly where that's shown on this website. Here we go, keynote, Rise of the 100x Developer. That's going to be really good. If you are in Colorado at that particular hotel and they let you into the conference area, I suggest you go see that presentation. Coming up a little bit sooner, Jonathan will also be at DevNexus, April 11th through 9th in Atlanta, Georgia, where he will be talking about, other co-founder Olga will also be there, and they'll be talking about the fundamentals of migration engineering with Open Rewrite, where we'll talk about tech stack liquidity, how to keep your stuff up to date on top of all your good chain, on top of your software supply chain, and all of these good things that, well, we're here to talk about today. On the YouTube channel, we have been publishing videos on a pretty regular cadence. It looks like over the past week, we've done about 5 covering different nifty things you can do with the platform. And we started embedding these in the Open Rewrite documentation and the relevant pages as well. So if you've been browsing the documentation, you may have already seen those. And I was involved in recording a couple of these, so I recommend those. Oh, and this one that Jonathan did on writing dynamic recipe tests when the result of the recipe is dependent on an external system state is definitely a good one for recipe authors who have a recipe where it is hard to fix what the output is supposed to be for a unit test, as it might be something stateful or changing over time. So if you have ever struggled to write a recipe test that properly exercises the functionality of your recipe, or have been frustrated that you wrote a fixed test that later on, due to some external system state, started breaking, I recommend checking out that video. In related news, well, I guess it's not that related, but in also news that we have, we did a release of Open Rewrite 8.21.0 just yesterday, and well, it was 8.20 almost exactly 1 week ago, right before the last community office hours. Mostly bug fixes in these releases, as well as, of course, some cool recipes and functionality contributed by open source community members, as well as us. Ryan Hudson added a mechanism for printing out data tables that are collected by recipes. So I don't know if we've updated the open source build plugins to produce either of those yet, but as we've been talking about data tables on and off, I think we've mentioned or shown a little bit of those during previous office hours. That is something that will be more accessible in the open source world now. And let's see, I made a small enhancement to Rewrite Migrate Java for users of Gradle. The doing the Java 4 to 5 migration will now include adding configuration of your Gradle test task to use JUnit 5. So just one little gap in that recipe that's filled in now. And also, I think there was a pretty exciting improvement made to rewrite Java dependencies, where the find and fix vulnerable dependencies recipe, which goes and compares your code, or doesn't compare code, it compares your full transitive dependency closure to the GitHub Security Advisory database to search for vulnerabilities and both enumerate them all in a data table, as well as propose fixes for patch versions of dependencies, where a patch version bump would get you from a vulnerable version to a version that has a fix. This recipe has been enhanced, so previously it could only manage the versions of direct dependencies, but now we have an option where it can also override the versions of transitive dependencies, and this works now for both Gradle and Maven builds. And so if I go to some recipe results from running that and poke around, we can see that in one of these guys, in a Gradle file, it'll add this constraints section, which will note the dependency versions that it's bumping and what CVE number it is bumping that for. And in a Maven project, it'll now suggest dependency management blocks to manage the versions of your transitive dependencies. So staying on top of vulnerabilities in your full transitive dependency closure is something that you have been struggling with or just tired of doing manually. Take a look at this recipe. It can help you out. Okay, so that is about all of the big news and updates we have for the past week. So here today we have with us two enormously talented developers, Scott and Kyle, who substantially work on the front end of the Moderne application, but they're very versatile, cover a lot of subjects here. Being a startup, we have a small staff, and everyone has to be pretty versatile in what they do. So you can never capture all of someone's contributions in any one job title. By the way, very happy to have them here, and they have some really cool stuff to talk about, which is chiefly concerned with codemods, a refactoring technology in the JavaScript and TypeScript ecosystem, which does not originate with Moderne, does not originate with Open Rewrite, but that we have been adapting to, Borg-like, consuming into ourselves, so that we may be not just one, but all of the refactoring technologies in the world able to run as recipes. And this is similar to, but obviously technically very distinct from, how we added support for refaster style recipes in the Java ecosystem. So Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about the origins of this project, how we undertook it, what the work was like, what objectives we were striving for, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so we kept getting inquiries about our support for JavaScript and TypeScript as we talked to folks. And what we began to realize is that there was a huge ecosystem of existing tooling out there for JavaScript and TypeScript that performed very similar operations to what recipes were doing. A lot of that is based on the work that came out of Meta with JS CodeShift and CodeMod. In addition, ESLint is almost like a de facto standard across a lot of large projects for maintaining good code hygiene and consistent styles, which are things that are important to us, that we're trying to bring to all languages. And so what we wanted to do was figure out a way to take like that existing work and then integrate it within our platform so that we could leverage a lot of the enhanced capabilities that we have around data analysis, visualization, and mass refactoring. So today you could go run a lot of these commands on your repository on a one-off case, but if you have an entire fleet of front-end code or even back-end code with Node.js, and you're looking to either do some research into what different versions you have out there of a particular library, or apply a consistent set of stylistic rules, we wanted to be able to kind of leverage that capability with what we have today in the platform. And that's kind of what we've done. We've baked in node support into our engine, so to speak, and then through executing a lot of these existing tools like ESLint or CodeShift, we're able to do transformation of the repositories that we have on the platform and present that back to the users, again, as either a diff that they can review and commit to the repository, or through data tables or visualizations. Anything you want to add on, Kyle?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much kind of answering, like, how do we support JavaScript? It's pretty tough question to unravel because there's a lot of ways to support it, but we kind of identified exactly as Scott said, that there's a lot of AST tools already out there. I mean, all you have to do is just open up any JavaScript project and you'll see not only dependencies, but you'll see dev dependencies. Almost all of those are AST tools using a really robust AST tooling system. There's tons of trees, tons of parsers all at play here. And it leads to a situation where a lot of people kind of just like dusted under the rug. That's why you see a lot of these like zero config frameworks coming out where like people don't have to really worry about these. Or even if you think of like old Create React apps where they have like eject mode, and almost no one touches that unless they know Webpack, because if they do, all of a sudden they're now responsible for like 2,000 lines of Webpack, which is all AST transformation stuff. So getting back to Moderne, we really wanted to say, okay, well, how can we make this like easy for people to use, easy for people to discover? Because that's another problem within the JavaScript community. It's just out there on NPM. You kind of either have to read a blog or know somebody that's worked on it or used it, word of mouth kind of thing. So we want somewhere that's easy to find these things, where it's supported well. So we're doing that curation part. And then, like Scott mentioned, we want to leverage what we already have with the Moderne platform in terms of being able to run this at scale, and then also to be able to do other things, enhance things like the data analytics and analysis that we provide with other recipes.
Yeah, so I guess we can kind of dive right into some of the things that we have to show. If I present a share screen, I want to select. Boom. So here's an example of how we are using ESLint as kind of our driver for this transformation. We are pulling, as Kyle mentioned, a lot of existing rules from various sources. One of the things we did is we went through a GitHub repository called Awesome Codemods, which is a great collection of like links out to other repositories that have either ESLint rules or code mod collections. And what we tried to do is we kind of tried to curate that into our recipe catalog, and through a little bit of generative magic with some mustache templates, we were able to pretty quickly like build up a nice little catalog of JavaScript code mods that focus either on formatting, modernizing some of the larger frameworks that are out in the JavaScript ecosystem today, or just doing general kind of like code hygiene along those different frameworks. So as I was mentioning, one of them, disallow unnecessary spread. One of the things we tried to do is, since this is all built on a lot of prior art, we wanted to make sure that we included links out to the actual rule that this is going to apply. So you can kind of view the author and a little bit more explanation about the rule and what's good and what's bad. But what this also illustrates is we made it easy by basically just packaging up with or around a very basic recipe. It's kind of like the building block. where we can just invoke the ESLint command. And what we're doing is we're just providing like a very simple configuration file. If you've worked with ESLint before in a personal or professional setting, this file is probably dozens to hundreds of lines long with various configurations, which you can actually pass in if you want to see how it would apply. But for here, we're using it to just target very specific rules. And then as a part of this, what we did is we ingested, I think, 1,000 of the most popular TypeScript and JavaScript repositories on GitHub as of earlier this year to kind of give us a sense of like how these code modification recipes would play out. And what we found is like, yeah, there's a lot of hits. Unsurprisingly, maybe surprisingly. But if we look at like the disallow unnecessary spread on this YouTube JS project, we can see how it's identifying that like, yes, this is not necessary because you're already performing this action. So you can save yourself objects being created by applying that transformation. Yeah, so another example here, just to show that we've added to the engine enough plugins from the and parsers from the JavaScript ecosystem, so we're able to operate on not only TypeScript and JavaScript, but also on JSX, which is its own unique thing. And hopefully the demo gods are in my favor because I like running things live.
And hey, when something messes up in a live demo, it just proves how authentic we're being, that we're not staging it overly.
Yes, exactly. And definitely not skipping to another tab that already had this preloaded, which demonstrates
well, that's just good showmanship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We don't need to fix it in post. We fix it in pre. An example of how we are going in, and this is a very, very simple example of how it can modify JSX as well. Yeah, a couple other ones that I definitely wanted to call out. Some of the larger collections that we pulled. ESLint actually broke off a lot of their rules related to stylistic changes into a whole stylistic plugin. They're very opinionated, and what we did is we took each of those rules and we made them an individual recipe, but we also included a roll-up. So if you just want to take everything they recommend on how to style your JavaScript and TypeScript, you can. But if you just want only a handful, you can also kind of piece that together yourself. Another interesting one was Angular, which actually has its own tool that they provide. And what we did for that is we actually just invoked that and learned the hard way about upgrading Angular projects. Chief amongst them is that they recommend going one version at a time. And fortunately, they provide a really nice update guide, so you can kind of get a sense of what you would expect to find if you were going through and doing this remediation by hand. So a lot of the basic things like upgrading your dependency versions in your package JSON, invoking this Angular or this ng update command, which will also update various aspects of the project, which we were able to like see out in the wild. So here's an example of updating this project from 15 to 16. Definitely catches all of the package, but then it also goes a little bit further and removes dependencies that are no longer needed because you don't need to extend can activate in this case. And so this was pretty exciting. We know Angular is widely used, and updating pretty frequently. One of the challenges we ran into it though is we actually had to set kind of like a soft floor on the version that we could support at around 15. We tried going back to manage Angular upgrades from like version 8, and so far I've been stymied on how to get all the dependencies to install, which rely on C bindings that are either no longer available or no longer compatible with the engine that we're running on. You can have too new of a version of Node apparently, and if you try downgrading, then the Angular command complains that you're running on too old of a version. So yeah, that one's a thorny one, and I'm sure we'll figure out ways to kind of improve that as we go. Kind of the last one that I wanted to touch on was kind of what we would call a 5 to 6 upgrade. This is
Are you intending to be sharing your screen right now, Scott?
Yeah, I'm working on it. Hold on.
Okay, cool.
I was getting it prepped.
Sorry to interrupt you while you were working.
No worries. I'm just managing multiple windows here. So upgrading from like ECMAScript 5 to ECMAScript 6, definitely a lot of things out there when we kind of ran this one. So we can see that, yeah, there's some legacy syntax out there that probably isn't really required anymore, which you can use to use this tool to quickly go upgrade. And along that lines is back about 10, 15 years ago, when the JavaScript language itself was still maturing.
Not as mature, yeah.
Popular libraries like Lodash and Underscore just added a lot of syntactical sugar to make it easier to work with things like objects and arrays. A lot of that has now been adapted into the language itself and is not really necessary anymore. And so we have a series of recipes out there that are designed to basically move you away from having to use those legacy libraries and just use kind of native JavaScript as you would find today, supported in either the browser or on the Node.js.
It's so nice to get your code looking more idiomatic, right? You don't have to remember two ways to express the same concept. People who are maybe newer developers aren't going to be confused by seeing these old Lodash concepts in there. Feels thematically congruent with the recipe we have in the Java ecosystem for migrating away from at least parts of Guava to just Java standard library features that eventually rendered those aspects of the library less necessary.
Yeah. And with JavaScript on the front end, it's always a fight to keep your payloads as small as possible to improve the end user's experience. And I know Lodash is a very lightweight library, or can be, but every little bit can help in that respect.
Absolutely. So I know a little bit about what's going on under the hood to make this code mod support possible, given that it's a completely different AST model than what we normally work with in the open rewrite ecosystem. I was wondering if you could talk about some of the challenges of implementing this support that had to be surmounted along the way in order to get this, in order to have this capability as part of Moderne.
I mean, I think the biggest one that we still would like to improve on is, as I was mentioning with the Angular update and requiring multiple versions of JavaScript, is being able to have multiple versions available and then being able to reference the correct one for your particular use case from within Java itself. We really have to go with kind of a multiple installation and specifically referencing the node binary, and then ensuring that when you do a package installation to bring in the dependencies necessary for everything to be evaluated, making sure those are sandboxed appropriately, so you're not conflicting. Those are my challenges. I don't know if Kyle had additional ones that he encountered.
The dependency sandboxing thing you mentioned is important. Like, for example, JavaScript doesn't just show up like just in JavaScript files. It shows up in all sorts of things. Scott already mentioned JSX. So we definitely had to make sure that we're getting the right dependencies into the kind of recipe runner, that ESLint runner, so they could parse other things. Like, for example, Svelte is one that we support, but like those are Svelte files. They look very different from just your standard JavaScript file, but there is a portion of it that is JavaScript. So making sure that it's able to parse and enact the recipes on that. And then there's also, we haven't gotten into yet, but there's also a really cool thing that Canute added where, this recipe is running these executables and getting the diff from them if it's one that creates a diff. And you can imagine how we can just return that diff because that's just part of what a recipe does.
Right.
But one thing it also gets is it gets a lot of information back from, say, like a linter, where you're not getting a diff, but you're just getting information. And he was actually able to take that information and then attach it to a marker actually on the source file. So we get marker support. And I guess this is kind of a good segue into visualizations, because it's kind of a necessity. You have these markers, and from there we can have data tables. Let's see, can I present? Maybe I can. Window. Why, I think it is this one. Nope. Can you see? Yes, you can.
We can.
Okay, so here I ran just an ESLint recipe that specifically it's just bringing in the Unicorn plugin and using Unicorn recommended. So in this case, I'm not actually listing out rules, but just using the set config that they have in there. This is kind of a standard thing if you're just going to like grab a ESLint plugin and try to use it. So in here, there's tons of rules going on, and you can see there's lots of changes too. But you could also see, let's see. That we get data tables as well. And did that open? Oh, I'm not sure.
Sharing a window and not the whole monitor.
Yep, that's the case. Maybe I can present again. Stop screen share, share. Okay. So now you can see we get the whole data table. We have every hit of those rules where they're going off, which rule they are, severity level, which this is set inside of that recommendation, kind of hidden there, but you could.
Are you able to zoom this in or easily increase the text size a little bit?
Maybe, let's see.
Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely more legible.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Here.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, so you could see how we have the source path for everything here, where the rule actually identified something, what that message was, and so on. And of course, we have it in a tabular form here. So what's the next thing we do at Moderne once we get a tabular form? We start making visualizations.
So I'm a little curious before we jump into the visualization. So it's the code mod itself that is emitting this data table, or our infrastructure is like post-processing some other output of the code mod into a data table?
Our infrastructure is post-processing. So what's happening is that the like the linter in this case is returning like range positions of where some detail is, like this is whatever this message is. You should have used this instead of this. And you'll have like a range in the source code. and Canute's mapping that to a marker, and then we have a data table that's going through all those markers to create the actual data table. So it's using
Gotcha.
similar to how we create data tables with any of our recipes at that point.
Right.
Yeah, so let me see. I'm gonna have to share my other screen again.
Let me be the Roz to your Frasier and help produce this show, Kyle.
All right. So we have 2 visualizations right now for these ones, ESLint problems and problems by repository. I'll go ahead and just run this here. But you can see how really quickly, now that we have this tabular data, we could start making really useful visualizations to people. In this case, you can see what the largest offenders in terms of rules. And this could, like in this case, it's just we ran that preferred or the recommended rules that are in Unicorn, but this could be any ESLint rule that you set in there, or any configuration or set of rules that you define there. And now you could find across all of your repos. In this case, I think it was like 500 repos. Where your problems actually are. This could also be helpful if in ESLint you can actually set these rules to block, and people will do this really commonly for CI systems, for releasing and so on and so on. So you can imagine how like just flipping something from like warn to block might break a lot of teams. So this, you kind of have an idea of ahead of time, should we do this? And if it's a fixable one, you could just go ahead and fix it before you even turn it to block, which is, nice perk too.
Right. So is it an attribute of the rule itself that whether a rule is fixable? Like, could we alternately have a visualization that showed like fractions of violations that are automatically fixable and ones that require manual attention?
That information is available. It's not in that data table. Yes.
Right. Yeah, cool. That's just a thought of something that could be neat.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, really cool. So these CodeMod recipes exist independently of the open rewriter of Moderne repositories. And Scott, you alluded earlier to using automation to create wrappers around those code mods. They look like a recipe, our unit of work or transformation. What does one of those wrappers look like? Like if I found a neat code mod that wasn't already in our recipe catalog, how would I go about adding it? Aside from in my personal case, sending one of you to a direct message, hey, please add this code
mod. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's really just comes down to putting these particular configuration blocks for ESLint into a YAML file and packaging that up. We were able to get we built a couple of base recipes in Java, which either accepted like those configurations or were pretty specific about what it asked for in terms of like, I think our Angular one, all you have to do is just give it a version number. But the more interesting ones like the code mod, where basically the YAML file or the YAML definition of the recipe will just say like, this is the code mod I want to execute. And that's basically it. So
right, if it doesn't require parameters.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see if I can real quickly pull up one of the code mod examples so you can see that it really isn't too bad. Kind of the key for us, and what we spent the most time doing, was going through these sites, pulling out a lot of the data into a format that we could then just basically run through with a basic template generator, and then kind of like output that as a YAML file that we could package up. So here's an example. So this is basically it.
Can you zoom this in a little bit?
Yeah. So as an example,
Thank
woo, you go too far.
Thank you.
Comes back around. Yeah, this is a recommended view cleanup, and it's if you've done any work with our recipes in the YAML before, it'll look pretty familiar. Our recipe list is basically just invoking our base ESLint. We say, yeah, we want to fix it, and then we just drop in a block of JSON as our configuration file. But as you can imagine, a lot of this stuff becomes pretty rote and automatable if you have an underlying data source that kind of captures kind of like the key things that would change, which would be the rule name, possibly the severity, and then if you have like a specific parser that you need to use. As Kyle mentioned, things like Svelte may require a different parser than what you would need for just running on a regular JavaScript or Node script file.
Can the Moderne CLI run code mods or only the SaaS?
That's a good question. I assume it can. It's a recipe at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's what I was assuming as well. But I know that, like, at least within the implementation of that recipe, we my understanding is, we'll go take the LSTs captured for that project, write it back out to disk, invoke ESLint on it, gather up the results. Yes, we kind of like leave the open rewrite LST model of the world, enter an on disk running ESLint model, and then come back to the open rewrite model with the results of running that recipe. And if all of that implementation of doing that translation back and forth is in that ESLint recipe itself, then I would expect it would just work. But if there's some other external thing required to support that,
you'll need a node runtime on your path. I think
node runtime,
yeah, that would not be packaged up with the recipe.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and then so most of what we've been showing today is through the Moderne interface, which we remind you both the Moderne SaaS and the CLI are free for open source projects on GitHub. So if you are an open source developer and you want to use any of the tools we've been showing you today, whether ESLint or the Moderne SaaS itself for any purpose on your project, and it isn't already in the list of projects that we ingest, which is some 35,000 strong, I believe. Just send us a message in our open source community Slack or Discord, and happy to see about getting your repositories added so you can try some of this stuff out. And obviously, if you worked at a closed source or for-profit enterprise that did not want your code shared openly, we can work with you on that too. So just let us know if you are interested in any of that. Let's see. Anything else you guys wanted to had on your list that you wanted to share about code mods, the implementation thereof, the implications thereof, etc.?
I think moving beyond just code mods, I know we recently expanded our support for managing Node.js dependencies, and I was wondering if Kyle has that one queued up, which also segues into a nice visualization to kind of better understand the range of versions that you may have for a particular package.
I love segueing into a nice visualization. Let's do that.
Yeah, I can do that. Let's see. Back here. I think we're good again. So this is one of the newer recipes. It's Node.js search dependency insight. From the marketplace, there's just a Node.js category now you can select. I ran this. What did I run this on? I ran it on TypeScript org. That makes sense. Because what I ran it on was for the pattern name TypeScript. So at this point, it's going to do a dependency insight, very similar to our Java one, but it's looking just for the dependency TypeScript, because TypeScript is a dev dependency for TypeScript projects. So I can go ahead and, again, you could get the data table if you want for the visualization, we have our same violin chart that we've used. And of course, I put TypeScript, but you could also put any dependency or any dependency pattern. It's just a glob pattern. So if you were looking for sometimes these mono repos that use like Lerna or stuff, they will like prefix a lot of their packages with some type of namespace. You could, of course, just use that namespace star and you would get all those things. But you could see here, wow, there's a lot of different versions of TypeScript out there, right? Going back really far. And the important thing to keep in mind here, especially if this was your organization and these were all your repos, like at each of these breakpoints for major versions, this is a lot of features. Like TypeScript really, when they up that major version, there is a ton of new features that come out. So, I mean, I would look at this and be like, I'm happy that a lot of people are up close to the latest, but I'm worried about this group who might be writing just TypeScript that's different to some of these other teams, or not utilizing features that they should be, whether it be for security reasons or whatever. So just another neat visualization that can quickly help you tell kind of the state that you're in.
As a user of TypeScript, do you often find these migrations between major TypeScript versions to be traumatic? Are they? Is it pretty easy to go between major version 4 and major version 5, or is it a lot of breaking changes to deal with?
I find it to be not that bad. They tend to deprecate like old things really well for a long period of time before they tell you it's gonna go out, and even sometimes then they still keep it in but as deprecated, and they're pretty good on giving you the ability to change certain things just using the command. But overall, like I think the bigger thing is a lot of Scott kind of touched on this earlier with the underscore and the low dash. Like JavaScript standard library
idioms littered around.
Exactly. JavaScript's standard library is like very small, and at one point some would even say incomplete, which is why you have things like low dash. And so as you get more features both in TypeScript and in JavaScript, because TypeScript usually uses whatever is going to be in the next version of JavaScript that's already passed the TC committee, you will find that it's moving away from like libraries that you're bringing in or somebody's bringing in to the native language features.
Right.
So that's good for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I just wanted to point out for anyone not familiar with this style of visualization that these gray blobs to the side of any given dot indicate that there are many instances of that dot, right? That version with the wide gray area around it is much more popular. Yeah, you can see it's a much higher count than versions with the narrow range. So this helps you see not just what versions are in use, but also the relative distribution of those versions. Yeah, for anyone not as familiar with violin charts, they are a fun data visualization. So one thing I'm curious about is like as front end developers, what sorts of code mods or other recipes do you already find useful, in your day-to-day work, and which do you miss? Like what kind of functionality from code mods, from Open Rewrite, from Moderne do you use and appreciate currently, and what do you wish you would have?
Good question. So I kind of mentioned this before with zero config frameworks. Like a lot of the time, you're just kind of trusting the framework authors to pick some good standard defaults. In our case, we expand on that quite a bit, but sometimes you just don't discover things that are useful. Going through this exercise, especially shout out to the people maintaining the Unicorn package, like that has some really great stuff that we've now integrated back in to our app. and we use. Some of the other ones one that I'm particularly passionate about that we didn't show off here that Jonathan has a video of that you could check out in the Moderne videos.
Is this on YouTube?
Yeah, I think it's the code mod video. The example he uses is the safe regex one. That one's really good, especially if you have a fleet of node services. Node, of course, is single threaded, and so you could actually lock up whole instances of node with unsafe regex.
Might be this one, Kyle?
Yes, it is that one. There you go. So this improves your regex not just for readability, but also to make it safer, so you can try to prevent catastrophic backtracking, which is a whole class of error with regex. So that's a really cool one, especially, like I said, if you have node microservices. Definitely check out that one.
Yeah, I went ahead and put a link to that YouTube video, the JavaScript code mod scale with Moderne, in the chat. It's just 2 minutes, so if you're curious to hear more about this, I do recommend going and checking that out. Yeah, very cool. So for those, I am curious just about like the state of the code mod ecosystem. You talk about taking advantage of the new features, like the new versions of TypeScript. Are there already code mods out there that implement some of those patterns, and have we included them in the set of code mods that we have loaded into Moderne?
I could take that. Yes, there are, and yes, we have. Like
Cool.
The curation process is trying to pick kind of the best of the best, and of course, if there's something that's not on there that people feel we should be taking a look at or just are unaware of, like feel free to shoot us a message through any of the Slack or email.
Yeah, what recipe module are we putting these code mod or these ESLint wrappers in?
Right now, they exist in like a prototyped what is it? Rewrite code mod. Yeah, rewrite code mod. So if you looked at the deploy page on the application or on the Moderne app, you would see rewrite code mod in there, and people could use that. And once we're confident with it, we're going to move it into the open source, and then contribution will continue there at that point.
So rewrite code mods itself is not currently open source, but the plan is for that to be open source.
Yeah, exactly. The plan is for it to be open source. It's not moved over yet. You can use it on the application, or you could use anything that can load from the Sonotype, I think it is, that's stored.
Right. Yeah. So you saw how a code mod wrapper. You demonstrated how a code mod wrapper looked in YAML earlier. Do we have any documentation of that in the Open or Moderne documentation yet?
I think that's kind of part of the last phase before moving it over to rewrite, because you'll notice when we showed those, there are like extra options in those recipes. We probably want to tune that down a little bit just to make it even more simpler. Like we don't want to scare anyone away with just like a lot of options. And a lot of that's just been a learning process as we've used it, because we use the term dog fooding, and that's what we're doing here, right? Like we're making sure that we're satisfied with it first.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. All right, I mean, very cool stuff, guys. I think this added 400 new recipes to our catalog, something like that.
450, I think, at last count.
Nice. That's like 20% of all the recipes we have now are code mods, something like that. That's pretty cool. That was a nice jump to include that language or to include those languages, those technologies, and support for refactoring and mass automation at scale. Yeah, really, really amazing progress. Let's see, Jonathan asks, will Moderne be sponsoring via GitHub or otherwise supporting the library authors of these code mods? We have no particular plans to sponsor anyone at the moment. It's not ruling it out. Yeah, no immediate plan to provide sponsorships. Just providing another way of running the code mods for now. Yeah, so let's see. Any final remarks or anything you wanted to say, Scott or Kyle, before we kind of wrap things up here?
No, thanks for having us and being our host today.
Yeah, right on.
Thanks
a lot for coming, guys. Yeah, we do these community office hours every week. We're happy to field questions on recipe authoring or using any aspect of the technology. So, we're happy to get up here and just talk about what's on our mind and what we're interested in. But when we call these community office hours, we mean it. So if you are trying to use Open Rewrite or Moderne to do something and you have a question, you can bring it here and ask it, and we're happy to allocate time for that. So yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. Like I said, look forward to seeing Jonathan and or Olga at UberConf and DevNexus. Check out the new release of Open Rewrite. Check out those cool videos that we've posted on various subjects recently on the Moderne YouTube channel. And yeah, check out that blog about the Dev Center. A lot of good stuff coming out in the ecosystem, and I look forward to reviewing all of your pull requests, adding recipes and features to, and hopefully soon new code mods to the ecosystem as well. So yeah, thanks a lot for coming, everyone, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.